Hello, everyone who's here live and those who are listening on the Broom Radio podcast. This is Field Tuning, a monthly divination container facilitated by myself, Hoda, at Intrepid Bodies. And I want to say thank you for tuning in if you are listening to this. And thank you again for those who are here live. I am in the process of delineating and also waiting to hear input from the people who are in the pot on whether or not it would be aligned to up the frequency of field tuning. So don't be surprised if you see another November 2024 divination somewhere. It might not be directly on the Broom podcast, but stay tuned. And if you want to know how you can stay tuned with containers and things of that matter. Um, Regarding the Broom Radio, please feel free to follow us on X, on Threads, on Mastodon. And usually I don't put that information in the episode notes, but I'll make sure that I do. Hang on, y'all. Ha! Hey. Um, yeah, I don't usually share socials in the episode details, but I'll be sure to do so for this episode. Um, I am biased because November is also the month of my solar return. So, and in general, I just feel like Scorpio season has been very interesting for me. I'd be curious before I even pull these cards over, before I even get into the different groups, to hear from those who are here live, either in chat or if you want to unmute, you're definitely welcome to. How November/Scorpio season has been for you so far? And I'll mute because I know there's a lot of background noise on mine. I'm going to read out what Mothers of the Night put in the chat regarding how Scorpio season/early November has been for her. She says, I feel like it's been eventful, lots of movement for me. Mhm. Thank you for reflecting. I'm going to hold a little bit more space because I see that folks are typing. I guess I'll say for me, it's been a pretty radical month, and it's like the sixth day of the month, and it's been pretty radical, and not just in the way that I'm like perceiving the month and the season. I feel like, and there's other places in the Broom Radio to check in regarding like the way that the tropical zodiacal season has been impacting us. Shout out to Mantra, which is another container. Um, but I feel like, yeah, it's been radical in the sense of the way that I've been thinking, the way that I have been called to take action, take not take action in certain ways. It's been radical in the sense that I've had to do like a lot of on my own energy body, like energetic clearing around emotional attachments in particular. And I don't, yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like the realm of emotional attachments is something that I'm really comfortable with. Um, but for some reason, it was incredibly difficult. Like just leading into Scorpio season and leading into this month. Um, I will also say full disclosure that again, I'm like transmitting this container from Ethiopia, my ancestral lands, and I've been here now almost 2 months. And there's no part of me that feels like the way that I have been called to structure my reality is not connected to where I'm located. I don't know if there's any way for anyone to structure their reality without considering the locale that they're in, but most importantly, like the ecosystem that they're part of from my perspective. And so I've been kind of taking that in stride, just understanding that I'm like my own physical vessel is like in a new time zone, eating different foods. And so I guess I say all that to mention that I've also had to like offer myself quite a bit of grace this season. Um, so yeah, thanks for holding space for me to check in, y'all. Um, I'm gonna read what Boone Deluxe says in the chat. Boone says, feels pretty intense. Things coming through that don't feel comfortable, but strong call to action. Boone also says, yes to emotional attachment currents. Definitely. And I welcome y'all, to expand more in the chat if you want to, or unmute if you want to. I'm happy to read what y'all say in the chat out loud. But if there's nothing to expand on just quite yet, I'd love to also get into the cards. So traditionally, field tuning is divided into 3 different groups: group 1, group 2, group 3, respectively. And I will offer y'all a chance to fill into which container of cards or which container within this divination you feel most magnetized by, called to, just intuitively. If you want to feel into that before I start sharing the cards, I welcome you to do so. And then if you do get a sense of what group you might be aligning with, feel free to share it in the chat. Nobu writes in the chat, group 2, apparently. Thanks for sharing. And you don't have to share it in the chat if you don't want to either. I'll say pretty much what I always say is I always feel like there's a little bit of me in all of these groups that might have to do with the fact that I'm like facilitating this divination, so it's not really a surprise to me either. So what I'll do is I'll share a photo. Oop. When the camera opens the front camera and you're just not ready for that view yet. I'm gonna share photos of the cards that I pulled for group 1 and get into what I feel is, the intuitive sort of message for those who relate to group 1 or feel called to group 1. And I'll read these out as I share the photo. So group 1, we have the 6 of Staves. All of these cards are upright, by the way. The 6 of Staves, which is the 6 of Wands in traditional tarot. We have the Princess of Cups, which is usually the Page of Cups in traditional tarot. Actually, I think it's the Knight of Cups. Yeah, the Knight of Cups. And then the last card for group 1 is the Nine of Cups. So I'll share this photo and then I'll read the cards out loud. We have the Six of Staves, which translates to the Six of Wands. We have the Princess of Cups, which translates to, again, in the traditional tarot, the Knight of Cups. And then the last card in this spread is the Nine of Cups. Group 1, Group 1, Group 1. So starting with the Six of Staves, I'll read what the booklet says and then kind of go into my own divination. The Six of Staves. Crowned with laurels of victory, the woman on this card rides a pure white horse. The six staves surrounding her are raised in a tribute to her success and courage. The meaning of this card: victory, acknowledgement, and honor. Victory, acknowledgement, and honor. There's strong possibility that those who relate to group 1 and feel connected to the cards in group 1 are going to kind of see and notice a trend because this is the staves card, and it relates to, I believe the staves relates to the element fire, sun. It relates to, so staves relates to, in this deck, the goddess Freya, the Norse goddess of creativity, fertility, and beauty. And it reads, like conduits of the sun's, I'm just going to read it, like conduits of the sun's procreative forces, staves themselves channel energy to areas where it can encourage growth. Staves bring movement to a reading much like the movement displayed by Freya as she rides through the sky in her chariot, drawn by magical gray cats. So specific. Freya in this deck is considered a pragmatic goddess, and she's associated with the Aesir, a group of Norse gods and goddesses who came into existence with the Iron Age when the first tools and weapons were developed with forge and fire. Very specific. I love that. So I guess what comes up for me when I think of all of these different threads and put them together, the Six of Staves, I think reads in this moment as energy that's been channeled to either creative project or creative pursuit. I also feel like energy that's generated, and this could be super spicy, but the energy that's like funneled towards fertility and like creating a container, not just like in the vessel of one's own body and the vessels of people who can carry babies. I'm thinking about fertility in like a more macro scheme, which relates to like fecundity, the ability to just procreate based off of one's imagination. And so when I think of the Six of Staves and I think about fertility, creativity, oh, there's another aspect too that I wanted to acknowledge is like the way that energy can be funneled towards cultivating beauty, which has been very active for me this month. Just like the sheer effort that it takes to like not only beautify oneself, but again, beautify a container, beautify a space that you're part of. These things are like, for some reason, I want to say like the secret arts in my opinion. These are the things that the type of actions that humans take to make spaces more hospitable, more welcoming to others and also themselves and different parts of themselves, right? And so when I think about those three things, creativity, fertility slash fecundity, and beauty, and the type of inner fire that it takes or that is drawn upon to cultivate, those sort of outcomes to one's own liking is what I feel like the Six of Staves is not only representing, but I feel like because the Six of Staves again relates to like victory or seeing an outcome come out, or an outcome in its preferred state, is something that those who relate to this group might feel like. You might just see that the fruits of not only like the labor that you've put in, but also like the way that you've maybe been called to, how do I want to say this, like disperse your energy, um may become not only very clear to you as to like why you've been called to move that way, but it also might become clear to you that you probably should keep going. So whether it's like a practice of beautifying yourself, beautifying your space, putting in maybe effort, or um, seeing how ambitious you are around a certain goal and sowing the seeds around a particular goal, or whether or not it's just like stoking your internal like creative fire, you might see some of these things come to a head in the beginning parts of November. Um, how does this relate to the rest of the cards? Well, I'm just going to read them because I can kind of already see where this is going. For group one. So let's get into the Princess of Cups before I draw all these together to paint a picture that we can all look at from our very different vantage points. So the deck reads, the Princess of Cups represents an adolescent girl as beautiful as Venus, and she is crowned with a waxing moon, anticipating love, pleasure, and the ripeness of womanhood. She drinks fully. The meaning of this card: artistic inspiration and receptivity, a young woman who symbolizes the gifts of Venus, which are love, beauty, and emotional richness. This card also means movement in these areas of life. Okay, Per, I already channeled that. Okay, thank you. And also, this card represents grace. I'm wondering if I should even say more. I guess what's coming up is like, yeah, like sometimes like cultivating the fire that it takes to cultivate beauty, love, and also just like the virility of like our typical Venusian features. It's a lot of work, okay? I think that's why, like, for me, I was like saying earlier, like, there might be stuff coming up for group one related to like the things that you do when like no one's looking to cultivate these kind of things in your life. And like also the things, I also feel like what might come up, especially with the word grace here, is like, how do I want to say this? Okay, let me zoom out a little bit. So I guess the example that's coming up is like if you want to like implement something into your routine, let's say that like amplifies or really stokes your creativity or your sense of beauty. There might be a moment where when you are like kind of cultivating, whether it's that habit, that routine, whether it's the discipline, that you kind of like reflect on past versions of yourself. I know I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, wait, I've been living like this? Like, why haven't I done this before? Or like just when I simply see the benefit of like funneling my energy in a new way, I'm like, honestly, each time it profoundly stokes awe in me. Every single time. I literally feel like a child, like learning how to walk again whenever I realize, and that could be dramatic, right? But it honestly feels that way when I'm like, oh, I could run my energy this way, or I can, you know, move in this particular context in this particular way. I'm like, oh yeah, and then like draw out a new outcome, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, and then I'll have moments where I'm like, why wasn't I doing that before? But then it's also like there's parts of me that when that question comes up, or like when I start to feel like, oh, like a little bit small because I like didn't know how to do something a particular way, I'll be elicited to like call in the energy of like grace. And I'll also be like honestly like called to embody like a sense of faith in myself that comes with just like that new pathway, that new like neuron that I just like helped birth, you know? So yeah, I do get the sense that the Princess of Cups, coupled with the Six of Staves, kind of embodies this sense of innocently like tracing these threads around how one was funneling their energy, how one prefers to channel their energy now. And I feel like the bridge between those two states right now is feeling like, okay, group one, maybe it's going to be grace that takes you from point A to point B, for lack of better words. I hope what I'm saying is making sense. Um, Absolutely. Mothers of the Night says, the miracle of a new perspective, greater than, greater than, greater than, LOL, in the chat. Definitely. Okay, I'm going to move on to the Nine of Cups. But if y'all have any questions about what I'm saying, what I'm channeling, please don't hesitate to type in the chat. But I'm going to move on to the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups, finally, satisfaction. A rainbow leads the woman, pictured in this card, to a banquet table set with 9 cups. Worth waiting for, this feast will nurture many hearts and bodies. The meaning of this card is satisfaction, contentment. Some consider this card the wish card, meaning a wish will be granted if it appears in a spread. I really appreciate that. I'm going to also read what the Suit of Cups represents in this particular deck. Freudian slip. So the path of Venus is what the Suit of Cups represents, which aligns with what we read in the Princess of Cups, right? The element is water. The luminary is the moon. Corresponds to love. The Suit of Cups is associated with Venus, the shielding. I don't agree with this. The Roman goddess of love and beauty. Okay. Cups symbolize the fertile receptivity aspect of the divine feminine. I would just say the divine. Conceived and born of fertile sea herself, Venus in this particular lore is the bringer of joy to gods and humans as well as to the plant world. The cups proffered by Venus are an invitation for each person to drink deeply of the magical waters of life, love, inspiration, and pleasure. They offer us our first experience of the divine in their purest form. Yeah, there's a sense of like childhood wonder. There's a sense of kind of breaking through the barriers that keep us from experiencing awe, group one. There's also a theme of, again, emotional fulfillment and recognizing how you can procure emotional fulfillment, not only for yourself, but again, within the ecosystem that you're a part of. And I also want to say like doing it unapologetically, because I feel like we don't do it for ourselves, then who we gonna do it for? You know? And so yeah, I am being called to also read the divinatory meaning for the oracle card that I pulled here. The oracle deck that I'm using is Beyond Lemuria by Izzy Ivy, and the card that I pulled is Home. The Home card represents heart-based presence, grounding, finding home within yourself wherever you are, the body as a temple for the soul. Ooh, love that. Travel, finding family wherever you go, occupying yourself, connecting to your unwavering infinite depths and the collective oneness. The divinatory meaning here is this card invites individuals to align with your temple space. Consider all of the things your body does and how you effortlessly move through reality. Become aware of the many gifts that come from a deep sense of truly occupying your quote unquote self. Often, very intuitive souls exist within the upper chakras and may struggle with the density of what is called quote unquote humaning. Individuals may not feel like they are from here, but as though that they are more accustomed to navigating a world with different parameters. At this time on earth, it is a blessing to have the vessel of a body. It is an opportunity to make a difference, so celebrate it. You have dreams and visions and may yearn to float around in more etheric realms, but it is when we are fully grounded and present in our bodies that we can actualize these ideas and make a difference. This card reminds us to be grounded, find your home, as just like a tree, the deeper our roots, the higher we can reach into the heavens. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like that really ties together like group one and what group one is being encouraged to do. It's hard to say that group one should do just one thing, but I pray that everything that came out of this divination aligns for those who align with this group of cards. I'm gonna pull those to the side. Also, I'm gonna take a moment to read the chat. Yeah. There's some chat about the elements that people associate Venus with. Yeah, and I definitely feel like people's nativity probably influences how they experience not only like Venusian energies, but I also feel like Venus as a goddess probably showed up in many different ways in different cultures. Not to be like that guy, but I'm like, like Venus in my culture, my lineages is like very earth based. So I'm holding the way that Venus is interpreted in this particular deck outside my field. But then I'm also like honoring my own Venusian nativity, which is very fiery. Um, so yeah, I'm glad we're chatting about this in the chat. Okay, I'm going to move on to group two, but also still hold space in my field for folks to reflect on group one if they want to in the chat. I'm gonna hold up this card because the glare is coming through pretty powerfully. Okay, I'm gonna take a photo. And then I'll share it in the chat. Ah, okay, we're sharing Venus placements. Mothers of the Night said, I hope it's okay that I read this out loud. Actually, wait. Part of me is like, am I gonna read people's placements out loud? Yeah, people are sharing theirs. I don't mind sharing mine. Um, my Venus in tropical um, and both sidereal is in Sagittarius. Surprise, surprise. Let's see. I'm also kind of multitasking right now, which I'm terrible at. Okay. No, but do you mind if I read yours out loud? No pressure at all. Nice. Nobu says, nah, it's exercised. All right, Nobu says that his Venus is in Leo in his natal, parentheses, fixed fire, LOL, and in retrograde. Nice. Well, I can't say nice or not nice, but thank you for sharing. What is your experience having that placement, if you want to share? Nabu says, LOL, I'd say it's like repressed fire. Interesting. That's really interesting. I guess because of the connotations that I have with Leo. But I guess, yeah, I can see that with it being like your natal chart, it's showing up as retrograde. I think, yeah, that's kind of what's coming up for me too. Nobu says, I think it's the retrograde. Yeah. Totally. Thanks for sharing. Okay, I'm kind of feeling pulled to group 2, so I'm going to read what the cards are. For group 2, we have the Queen of Cups. Next, we have the Nine of Pentacles. Then we have the Four of Swords. And I pulled an oracle card. The oracle card here from the Beyond Lemuria deck is Earth, representing nurture, nature, which I'll get into towards the end. The Queen of Cups. Let's see what she has to say. All right. Excuse me. I'm going to read what the deck booklet says and then get into my divination. The Queen of Cups, the full moon, is a halo around the crown of the majestic Queen of Cups. Her regal, mysterious being inspires people to look within to nourish their souls. The meaning, mastery of all that Venus and the suit of cups represents: art, beauty, intimacy, love, the ability to express love, to nurture others, an older person who inspires others to live harmoniously. I feel like group 2, the Queen of Cups, is definitely giving me the sense of, it's interesting because I do feel like a celebratory energy with group 2, but in the sense of like celebrating oneself, being a way to, yeah, I guess kind of get the best use, and I'm putting that in air quotes, right, of one's energy at the start of this month. What I'm really drawn by is what it says here: mastery of all that Venus and the suit of cups represents: art, beauty, intimacy, and love. And especially where it says the ability to express love and to nurture others. Um, group 2, I'm getting, yeah, like there's a sense of like basking in that. Basking not only in like your ability to like cultivate and appreciate things like art, things like intimacy, love, and beauty, but like your ability to like share that with others seems to be at the forefront at the beginning of this month. Um, there's also something about this Queen of Cups that represents, yes, this like regality. Um, it's interesting, yeah. I'm getting kind of like a bunch of different messages here, but I do get the sense that um a really productive and like I think fruitful way for those who relate to like group two to find themselves or give themselves a chance to like appreciate this sense of like mastery that might become apparent to you um, is honestly like asking how you can like cultivate it more like and not just to accumulate more, but I think that there's something about this sense of mastery that's tied to abundance, which we might get into as we read the Nine of Pentacles. And so I think that there's a heightened focus on themes that relate to the Queen of Cups for group two, because yeah, it's about, I get the sense that the beginning of this month is going to be about how water, how the suit of cups, how things that are related to Venus are like path opening and road opening things. Again, related to the things that we do when no one's looking, and how, again, the cultivation and appreciation of beauty, art, intimacy, and love, even if it's solely for yourself, kind of also like broadcasts to the universe, to say the least, that like you'd be a good steward of these kinds of things. So I am looking forward to seeing how the Nine of Pentacles ties in, but yeah, it feels like the Queen of Cups is like very much like sit on your throne, um, know where you're a master in, know what you're a master in, and I get the sense that, yeah, like there might be opportunities, whether they're like opportunities in our ecosystem or just in our own inner world, that are, yeah, like going to reveal to those who relate to group two that like taking up space in these different avenues in your life, for lack of better words, is tied to a lot of things like self-worth, but I also get the sense that like it also has to do with abundance, just to be fully transparent. Um, so interesting. Very interesting. So I'm going to move on to the Nine of Pentacles to see what is next here. The Pentacles in this deck are the Path of Lakshmi, um, represent earth and gold, and corresponds to fortune. I already knew that, so I'm not going to be surprised. Like, I work with this deck often. But the suit of Pentacles is associated with Lakshmi, the Hindu goddess of fortune and prosperity. Pentacles as gold and shiny as the sparkling jewels Lakshmi is so fond of symbolize the riches contained within the earth. The suit of Pentacles can be thought of as the grand harvest that arrives after we master the lessons of the previous three suits. Cups of water, the seed of inspiration planted by the divine, encouraged by the sun's energy. Staves are the first growth that sprout vigorously from the earth. Staves are pruned by swords for the sake of strength and growth. Finally, in the suit of Pentacles, the tree bears fruit so that the cycle may start again. Pentacles tell the story of the bounty of earth, so often symbolized in many cultures as a generous earth goddess. Lakshmi, the Hindu personification of this fertile, prosperous, and distinctly femme-coded force, is honored to this day for these very qualities. So as we get into the Nine of Pentacles, the Nine of Pentacles represents a figure in an enchanted garden with perfumed flowers, the figure being Lakshmi, and singing birds. They enjoy all the luxuries and pleasures that they have worked so hard to create. The meaning of this card is pleasure or sensuality, fertility and luxury, material prosperity. Now that this has been accomplished, perhaps it is the time to create a family. Wow. Very specific. yeah, I guess that the Nine of Pentacles to me connects to the recognition or the realization that happens in the Queen of Cups, just to kind of follow the cards in a linear fashion. Um, and I think it similar to what the deck is kind of saying, that like the progression of these different symbols that are held in tarot speak to like the esoteric progression of our own path and our own journey. Um, and it's like hard for me to like differentiate between like what I want to say and what the deck kind of already said around the progression through the elements, and how elements like cups, swords, staves, and pentacles are kind of like interconnected in this greater cycle of what I would call self mastery, self recognition, self awareness, self acknowledgement, self remembrance. People call it a bunch of different things in a bunch of different cultures. And I think um, the Nine of Pentacles here, well, the Queen of Cups first, I want to say, speaks to like this mastery of what we spoke of earlier. Um, this relationship with beauty, intimacy, love, how deep one can go in cultivating that for themselves. And then how sometimes the depth and the breadth of cultivating that means that we're sometimes called to share that with others, whether it's through community, whether it's with our family, whether it's through creating our own family. Like sometimes we go so deep, we come out the other side and realize like the gems that we have are important to be shared with others. Then these gems that the Queen of Cups has cultivated for group two, right, feels like they rest in this garden scene that Lakshmi is in, right, with the Nine of Pentacles. And so group two, it might literally just mean like a progression of like your own mastery, right? Taking what you know and grounding it in your experience of reality. It could also mean like literally sowing the seeds for a different future and a different outcome in life. And whatever that outcome may be, whether it's to start a creative project, whether it's to, I don't know, accomplish a goal, whether it is to like quite literally start a family. It feels like the Nine of Pentacles is kind of emphasizing that it's going to take a lot of earth, but that there's a lot of earth supporting these individuals. There's a lot of like earthy energies that are supporting individuals who relate to group two. And I'm not surprised because the oracle card is earth, so we'll get into that. I'm just drawing the connections here. And I really love how this card reads. I guess this is the last thing I'll say about this card. Is I really love how it says material prosperity now that this has been accomplished. Perhaps it is, yada, 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 yada. We'll get into that, right? Or we already did get into that. But it's like, yeah, there's this sense of like accomplishment also present for group two, but I just think it's very different from the kind of accomplishment that group one is going to kind of relish in, right? I feel like group one is like, oh my God, like I'm the I am also a conscious, I'm putting this in air quotes, conscious co-creator of my own reality is probably what group one is realizing. And group two is like, been there, done that. I'm trying to create something real, And I just kind of say that in a way to emphasize like the difference in attitudes that might be presented. And even more than just what I'm speaking to, right? But the difference of attitudes between group one and group two. So before I wrap this up, I want to read what the Four of Swords is about, but I already have a sense. So the Four Swords. Swords represents the path of Isis, the element air, salt. The suit of swords in this deck is associated with Isis, the Egyptian fertility goddess, and swords symbolize the incisive forces of the intellect. They cut through to refocus the energy grown in the preceding suit of staves. And there are no staves here. So I'll get to that in a second. The Four of Swords. The woman rests in recuperation. Four swords are suspended above her, protecting her from the outside world. The meaning of this card is a need for introspection and healing, recuperation from illness, time to take a break from stressful situations. To me, the Four of Swords, I think, really ties in perfectly with this message for group 2, in my opinion. I think if there's a grand refocusing or just a general focusing of one's energy that they mastered in the Suit of Cups, and they're feeling this draw or this call towards abundance that shows up in the Nine of Pentacles, creating a protective container around that, which is what the Four of Swords represents to me, makes a lot of sense. Again, I don't think that there's one thing that people can do that's going to like encompass what it means to create a protective container for everybody. Everybody's practice is different, but I would just say what's coming through is group 2, and for those who are aligned with group 2, if you feel like whatever you're birthing or are ready to like put your chips in for, quote unquote, and the Nine of Pentacles feels precious, feels aligned and juicy, I would say protect it. And protecting it looks different for every single person. Again, I don't want to elicit fear, but very similarly to how all creative processes start here on the earthly realm, they start in a from like a seed, and then that seed goes into a soil, and the soil is kind of like the protective container that like ensures that all the right, not only just elements but nutrients are available to that thing, whether it's an idea, whether it's a literal manifestation, whether it's a baby. I'm just saying, so these processes, these laws of creation, if you will, which feels really big to say, it feels like that's what the Four of Swords is representing, right? This awareness of the laws of creation that the Queen of Cups obviously has. It's like, yeah, it feels really important to like speak to, protecting the things that we're nurturing in whatever way that shows up for us. I'm a Scorpio, so I'm like, protect. I think that's also why I'm going so hard around protection right now. So, nice. I see some reflection happening in the chat. Yeah, I just want to kind of remind y'all, I get lit up behind these divinations. I truly love this, but I don't want that to stop y'all from like reflecting, agreeing, disagreeing in the chat. Even if what you say is like completely left field, quote unquote, that's okay. I kind of prep the container to kind of be that way. So for folks who are probably here live for the first time, I just want to remind y'all of that. Okay. Nobu says, first thing Nobu says is feels V syncy with 2024 Scorpio mantra for me, which is something I spoke to earlier. Nobu also says this spread relates to getting concrete for me, or earthing. Nobu also says grounding, ashe. Yeah, and it's interesting that there are like 3 different types of elements here at play. Like we have cups, we have pentacles, we have swords, but then the oracle card is like earth. And so it's like, it's obviously being reflected here in the symbols, but also in my intuitive channel, like the part of me that's channeling some of these messages. It feels like also a ripe season, like cosmic season for those themes as well, for those who relate to group 2. So thank you for reflecting. Also aligns for me as well, which, there's not much more to say on that for me. Sorry, I'm a Scorpio, y'all. I'm very private in some respects and like very open in other respects. So yes, thank you for receiving me. But yeah, I can definitely relate to what group 2 is channeling, bringing you to the earth plane. Boone Deluxe says, a part of me feels a lack of permission to commit to this group, which was reflected in how I felt a group 2 ping at the outset, but many other parts of me have been lighting up. Thanks for saying, Boone. Do you want to say, I'm kind of curious about the interplay between the ping that you felt and then the lack of permission you feel now, if it feels like aligned to share, if there's anything there. Definitely. Can I ask another question? Okay. What parts of you have been lighting up as you listen to group 2? And I'm just, for those who are listening, I'm just holding space because I see Boone is typing. Mm. Is it okay if I read this out loud? Ooh, Ashe. So Boone says, what's lighting up for them right now is having an unexpected return road to my artistic mastery against a sense of odds and acknowledging what I have cultivated, the ripeness of it, and the need to protect it. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. Of course. Yeah. And I'd be curious. Okay, I'm going to close out group 2 with the oracle card, and I'd be curious what shows up for you or anyone else by the time I finish, like, and kind of close out this container. Because, yeah, I just have a sense that there's something here. So the oracle card for group 2 is Earth, nurture, nature. This card reads, looking after the planet, the ebb and flow of life, the loving embrace of Mother Nature, the natural beauty of death and decay, the macro, microcosm, time and nature, ancestors. I have to be honest, I just got really verklempt and like I just got like chills as I read that. So I'm gonna like ground myself for a second. Okay. Macro, microcosm, time and nature, ancestors, growth through weathering storms, nurturing self and heart so that you may flourish. The card reads, "No one can hold us the way nature can." Quote unquote, Mama Nature is a powerful healer and transmuter of dense energies we may be holding on to. Just as she takes in our out breath and returns our bones to fertile soil, so too can she transform our woes if we can allow ourselves to surrender, to lie in her grassy arms, or to be embraced by her branches. Just as plastics and oils cannot be broken down in the earth for renewal, when our emotions become hardened and impenetrable, catalyzed into something more destructive, they cannot be transformed into the compost that we grow from. Experiences we may categorize as good or bad are a part of life. Death and rebirth are a part of the natural cycle that allows for the continuation of life. Creating something through suppression and control that will not break down will only bring individuals further out of harmony. Nature is all around us. Notice nature and know that when you feel like no one else can hold you, nature can. Spend as much time in nature as possible and do what you can to preserve it. The themes here are grounding, finding our roots, reliability, physical healing, nurture, solid foundations, fertility, and vitality. Right. Ashe. Mothers of the Night says transmission received. And Boon Deluxe says getting a huge sense of sync for me. Ashe. I'm very glad to hear that, y'all. Some things percolating and lighting up for me as well as I was reading that. So I appreciate y'all for holding like the mutual space. Beautiful stuff, group 2. I can't say to do just one thing, but I pray that what what was transmitted lands and yeah, acts as like a fortifying agent for this month or the beginning of this month. Before I move on, I just want to like hold space to see. I know there's some folks that joined after I started, but I'm curious if those who didn't get to share what group they are resonating with would like to share now. If you're also feeling a little bit of all three, that's fair. I usually do as well. That just means you're tapped in. No, I'm just kidding. Just curious. And while I wait, I will share the cards for group 3. Well, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee first, and then I'll share the cards. Okay. Okay. Mothers of the Night said, I feel like group 3 might resonate for me. We'll see. And on that note, I will share the photo for Group 3's cards and read them out as well. So for Group 3, the first card that we had come out is the Sun card, which in this particular deck is reflected by a triunal goddess force called the Zoraya, which is pretty dope. The next card that we have for Group 3 is the Moon. So I love this interplay between the Sun and the Moon. Oh, and the Moon card here is represented by the goddess Diana. The final card that we have for Group 3 is the Seven of Staves, which in traditional tarot would be the Seven of Wands. And then the Oracle card, which I'll get into towards the end, is the Oracle card that says furred and feathered friends, which, yeah, I'll get into it towards the end. Mothers of the Night says, yup, LOL. Definitely me, LOL. Mothers of the Night also says the sun and the moon right next to each other is ... doing a lot for me. Would you like to say what it's bringing up for you? I also I wish I had my laptop with me so that I could do a more comprehensive read on the Zoraya, because I remember going down a rabbit hole learning about the Zoraya at one point. For sure. So let's get into the sun card. The sun, the sun, the sun. All right. The sun, the Zoraya. In Russian mythology, the three Zoraya are goddesses attendants to the sun god. As well as bringing warmth and light to the world, the sun represents the brightness of intellect, creativity, and fertility. The meaning of this card: an expansive, life-affirming energy, creativity, relationships with children, fertility, love, yang energy. Sorry, I skipped over the word masculine and opted to say yang just because, yeah, I'm trying to be mindful of my own container. But I'll read that again. So the meaning of this card: an expansive, life-affirming energy, creativity, relationship with youngers, fertility, love, yang energy. Why I keep reading it like that. But anyhow, I hope that part of the message translates. For Group 3, the sense that I'm getting, okay, it's super interesting because I'm also trying to dismember what I know about the Zoraya, but there is a part of the lore that I have read about how the connection of these three goddess attendants report to the sun god. And I say report to her with air quotes because I don't want to invoke that kind of hierarchical sort of relationship in this container right now. But this sense of being a trusted attendee feels very alive and feels very par for the theme that's coming up for when I look at the sun card. Oh, okay. Nobu also said Zora is Bulgarian for dawn, which, thank you for sharing. Feels very aligned. And I feel the themes that are present here, relating to life affirming energy, creativity, relationship with children, these sort of things that draw us out, that draw out aspects of our creative or energetic wellspring. I also get the sense, Group 3, that there's a sense of like reorienting oneself with, I want to say like this sense of like exuding energy, and understanding like when is a time to what is that, like radiate energy, and when it's a time to like store up energy. And how like this chapter, or like these first couple of weeks maybe of like November, might be moments, or might provide you moments where you can kind of see through the proverbial veil and understand like where your creativity is warranted, where your nurturing slash relationship with youngers is warranted, where your fertility is guiding you to, where your love is like guiding you to, and kind of following that impulse, especially with the emphasis of yang energy. I don't know why I keep saying it that way, but this emphasis of like yang energy, I feel like the sun in traditional tarot like quite literally represents that, like what sort of causes us to radiate, and how to follow that, like how to follow that impulse of like, I guess for lack of better words, like where to shine your light, or like where to shine your awareness. There's so much coming through my channel right now about the specificity of the Zaraya. Yes. Yeah, and I think it has to do with this sense that like, I feel like the lore around this, if I remember correctly, is like the Zaraya end up being like attendants for the sun because they do the things that the sun can't do because the sun is busy radiating and like warming the atmosphere, right? And so like in some of the lores, I believe one of the Zaraya is like responsible for life and like birth. Another one is responsible, if I remember correctly, and if I'm totally wrong, I'm totally happy to like reschool myself on this. But one of the Zaraya is like responsible for charting the celestial sphere, right? So she like almost like guides the sun on like the seasonal changes and like literally where it's best for him to shine. And then another Zaraya is like more of like embodies like a crone aspect, where not only is she like responsible for the passage of time, but like the passage of time into like death. So yeah, and I also feel like it's represented by yes, what it says here, that the sun, but I also feel like the Zaraya in this case represent the brightness of intellect, creativity, and fertility. And so that's, I said a lot. So I'm going to read the chat now. Oh, okay, I'm going to read what the screenshot that Nobu shared. Thanks so much for this. It says in this screenshot, Zaraya, Dawn, also many variants, Zaraya, Zariya, Zorza, I can't read all of these, is a figure in Slavic folklore, a feminine personification of dawn, possibly goddess. Depending on tradition, she may appear as a singular entity or two or three sisters at once. Although Zaraya is etymologically unrelated to the Proto-Indo-European goddess of the dawn, Hewesos, she shares most of her characteristics. She is often depicted as the sister of the sun, the moon, the Danica, the morning star, with which she is sometimes identified. She She lives in the palace of the sun, opens the gate for him in the morning so that he can set off on a journey through the sky, guards his white horses. She is also described as a virgin. In the Eastern Slavic tradition of Zagovoroi, I'm butchering it, I know it. She represents the supreme power that a practitioner appeals to. Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Nobu. Mothers of the Night also says finding equilibrium or equanimity is coming up for me when I look at the sun and the moon together. Thanks for sharing. So yeah, group 3. yeah, I think I'm going to kind of close the container of the sun and then move on to the moon card and see what this interplay between the two is about. The moon, Diana. In ancient Rome, Diana was honored as the goddess of the moon, as well as of wild forests and animals. The changing moon reflects the cycles of nature and of life. The meaning of this card: support of women who truly care for you, intuition, the receptive aspects of the divine, and intense dreams. Yeah, there definitely feels like this integration, or like I said integration, but I mean interplay um with the sun and the moon. I guess at first glance what did come up for me was like the infinity symbol, and how like the two luminaries, the sun and the moon, um are definitely contingent upon each other for many reasons, for many traditions, for many lineages. The day and the night and how they're connected to one another is coming up for me right now. And I feel like there's this sense of like again, I get this sense of like the sun is like reflecting this aspect or this lesson or this theme of knowing when to shine your light and knowing when to like reflect others' light, which is represented by the moon here, being again a theme for those who might relate to group 3, those who might be listening to this podcast and be like, okay, group 3 is what I need to listen to. I feel like um these processes, again, greater universal processes that are reflected in our own personal paths, can really easily be seen by this connection between the sun and the moon, and how, yeah, like quite literally in some lands, like there's a complete shift of like weather and like temperature when the moon is out, and then of course when the sun is out, it's a completely different sense of, again, like atmosphere and weather and experience. And so I think that, yeah, I get the sense that group 3 might understand like there's this, just as there is a balance in the universe between when the sun chooses to shine, all that goes into the sun shining. um represents one aspect of not only our personality, but like our sense of self. Just as when it's time for the moon to be in the sky, also with its many different phases, also reflects something deep within our own psyche and with our own sense of self. And I think that, yeah, it's very clear to me right now, like this interplay between the two luminaries is almost like reflecting back to those who relate to group 3 that, yeah, like there's going to be times where you need to radiate. There's times where you're going to have to hold space for other people to radiate and shine. And then there's going to be time for you to be like the steward of the light that's in the room. And then there's going to be times where you're going to have to attend to those who are stewarding the light in the room. And none of these things take away from our internal sense of self. They are just a way, like I kind of have been talking about in this whole divination, like these are all ways. The tarot is reflecting back ways and reflecting to us symbols of how we can channel our energy. And there's no should here and there's no forcing here, but there's also like a very tried and true process between the sun and the moon that literally keeps our earth, and in some respects, I mean, not in all respects because climate change is a real thing, but literally keeps our earth in balance. And so, yeah, I feel like this process is being reflected back to those who relate to group 3 because, yeah, like Anna kind of said, it's about equanimity, equilibrium, but I would go in so far as to say that it's also a reflection of universal law, or like ma'at, which to me doesn't just have to do with justice, but has to do with like how we fall into like the individual self, right? Falls into the concert of like universal harmony, um, to say the most and the absolute least at the same time. So, yeah, I feel like that was a big channeling, but I also feel like the sun and the moon are big cards. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Um, Is it time to get into the Seven of Staves? Yeah. Before I do, I'm holding space for reflections though. And I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee. Also turn to the Seven of Staves in advance. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the Seven of Staves. Again, the suit of staves here also doubles for wands in the traditional tarot. And then also, as I read earlier with group 1, represents the path of Freya, the Norse goddess. So I won't reread that. If you want to hear about the path of Freya from this deck, rewind to group 1. And hopefully those who are here like kind of remember this interplay between fire, life, fecundity, fertility that I talked about at the beginning. So I'm going to jump right into the Seven of Staves. All right, the Seven of Staves. The hot sun scorches the person in this card. Using a stave to fight 6 others, they are unable to get out of the heat. Despite their position of advantage, they are still forced to defend themselves. The meaning of this card is though you may have the quote-unquote upper hand in this situation, there is still a struggle. Success is possible, but only after dealing with difficult people who may not be quote-unquote supportive. Interesting, because I feel like when I look at this whole spread, if I were to take that card in isolation, I would totally be like confused. But when I look at this entire spread for group 3, that card feels very aligned. It feels like the Seven of Staves is kind of like an outcome of not only life, not all of life, right? But like this season might feel difficult for people who relate to group 3 if they were just taking a Seven of Staves approach. And if I did not just go into that whole divination about the interplay between the sun and the moon, universal cycles, how our internal states also can be transmuted and alchemized, similar and understood, I would say, similar to the way universal cycles are, then I would feel kind of, if I was someone receiving this, I would feel kind of like short-ended of the stick kind of vibe. But it feels like the Seven of Staves is kind of like emphasizing how outcomes, situations, wins in life, and I'm putting air quotes about around all these things, may kind of slip through our fingers or feel like they're slipping through our fingers, when in reality they're like opportunities to practice. Again, equanimity is a good word, but the reason why I'm not using the word equanimity is because I feel like there's this image of someone like meditating on a cloud somewhere. And if you know how to meditate on a cloud, please teach me. I don't know how to do that. When I meditate, I usually just like lay on the ground, like real into the earth type shit. And I guess what I mean by that is like equanimity is sort of, to me, somewhere I can get to, in my experience, has been somewhere I can get to after I've like alchemized a lot of shit, to say it as plainly as possible. And I think that there's something about this ability to like transmute uncomfortable states of emotions that kind of feels like might become apparent for those who are relating to like group 3, right? First week or 2 of November might present you opportunities to see that the internal state that you're occupying at any given moment, as changeable and as mutable as they can be, can also change the way that we radiate and extend our energy forward, meaning that we can show up, for lack of better words, different in almost every single moment. And we can do that not by force, but we can do that by choice. That choice being, again, I don't want to, like, right, like, be in situations where I'm quote unquote like the Seven of Staves, right? Constantly defending myself. And I feel like the way to disarm ourselves. It's not by like manipulating ourselves, it's not by playing mind games, but I think the sun card and the moon card here represent ways to do that. Again, transmute how we feel um, from a place of like love, I would say, like love of oneself and love of like a different outcome and love of like the work that it takes to get to those different states. So there's a lot of like emotional alchemy, I think, kind of funneling through some of these messages, but I think that also is like related to like Scorpio season, right? Like tropical zodiacal Scorpio is I would say like the queen king of emotional transmutation, kind of like we were talking about earlier. And not that people with Scorpio placements are the kings and the queens. It's like Scorpio season will call out of us that which needs to be transmuted to see how ready we are to do that. Um, so yeah, group three. I hope I hope what I transmitted aligns. Um, but before I close out this container, um, and before I read the oracle card, I just kind of want to check in. Thanks for saying, Boone. Boone says that all made a lot of sense to me. Nice. Boone also says, and feels this element speaks to the permission part. That I'm so glad that that came back around. I personally just love a full circle moment, so thank you for reflecting. Okay. I'm going to read the oracle card. And the oracle card again is furred and feathered friends. This card relates to ethical consumption, making a difference through our food choices, caring for all beings, animals, environmental awareness, doing the best we can, animal spirit guides. So before I read the divinatory meaning, there's a prayer that is in the description of this card, and I just feel called to read it. And the prayer says, may all beings everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. This is a translation of the Sanskrit prayer, Loka Samsata Sukhina Bhavantu. Sukhino Bhavantu. And so now I'm going to read the divinatory meaning. It says, look at how you choose to nourish your physical body and your ethics and reasoning surrounding your food choices. Where possible, explore fortifying, filling, and nourishing alternatives. Your body and energy will thank you for it. This card also signifies strong animal energies. That could mean working more closely with an animal spirit guide or bringing a four-legged companion into your life. You may have a greater awareness of the wisdom of the animals that you encounter and what their traits or messages mean to you. There's a very, 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 very strong sense with group 3 that like a channel message, and please take it or leave it, is like cultivating your relationship to your own anima as well. That occurs to me as I was reading the divinatory meaning for furred and feathered friends. And so again, that's going to look like a bunch of different things. to a bunch of different people, depending on which part of the world you're at, depending on what resources you have at your disposal. But I do hope that whatever was shared here is salient and also acts as a sense of support for you for the next couple of weeks. And as we journey further into the month of November. Ashe. Mothers of the Night says very aligned. I'm very glad to hear. Well, y'all, that was very fun to me. How are y'all feeling? Just want to do a quick roundup of a check-in. Ashe. Nobu says I'm V-zonked. Spent most of group 3 in a kind of trance. Dude. Yeah, I know it's pretty late where you are too, so thanks for being here. Boone Deluxe says feeling energized and earthed. Thanks for reflecting. Thank you as well for being here. And I just appreciate y'all in general. I'm gonna do the thing now, which is if you want to support field tuning, other containers that take place in the Broom Radio podcast, please do not hesitate to sign up to become a member at buymeacoffee.com/thebroomradio, where for $5 a month, you can receive each of these containers directly to your inbox, but also enjoy the perk of connecting directly to the Discord where so many conversations, so many lineages are, well, the conversations are popping off and the lineage work is happening. So I didn't want to mash those two things together. And again, if you want to find out more information about how you can support me and this work, and also inquire about booking a session, all of those details will be in the episode details of this particular episode. I haven't been taking sessions since I was like traveling and like adjusting. And so that has definitely changed. And so that information will be in the details here. And yeah, if you want to like donate and felt really resonate to this particular message, if you want to just like make a one-time donation, I'll leave that information as well. And thank you. Thanks for everyone who listened. Thanks to those who were here live again. I'm like, okay, what did I miss? What did I miss? I don't think I missed anything. I might see you guys again for another time this month. Again, I don't think that reading will be on the podcast because, baby, that's just way too much free game. So you want to figure out how, like, where that second reading might be. Follow us on Twitter. Follow X, Twitter, Threads, Mastodon. And stay in touch. Peace.